Okay, so this deep dive is about when a loved one's been arrested and you're trying to figure out what to do next.
Yeah, really tough situation for everyone.
Definitely. And the legal stuff can feel super overwhelming on top of everything else.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting is that the source we're looking at really emphasizes those first 24 to 48 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it says that the moves you make right away can have a huge impact later on, like a ripple effect on the whole case.
So you've got to act fast, but not just emotionally strategically.
Exactly. The source actually mentions getting the basic facts first, like figuring out where they're being held,
Right.
what the charges are, when is the arraignment even.
Okay, so almost like you've got to take a step back from the chaos for a minute and just get those key details.
Yeah, think of it like laying the groundwork, you know?
Yeah.
You need that foundation before you can even start building a defense.
That makes sense. So you know where things stand legally. Then the source says to get a criminal defense attorney ASAP.
Right, which, I mean, seems obvious, but I'm guessing there's more to it than just picking a random lawyer from the phone book.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't even know where to start. Is there a way to find the right lawyer for this specific situation?
There is, and the source actually has some good tips on that. It mentions checking with your local bar association.
Okay.
They can give you referrals, and lots of them even do those free initial consultations.
Oh, that's good. So you can get a feel for the person first.
Exactly. You can kind of interview them, see if their approach is a good fit for you and your loved one.
Makes sense. So let's say you found an attorney and you're in that first meeting. What are some questions that you should be asking?
Well, I definitely ask about their experience. You know, have they handled cases similar to this before? Another thing to ask about is their approach to plea bargains. Are they the type to negotiate, or do they usually push for trial? And then, of course, you want to know about fees and how they'll communicate with you. You need someone who's going to keep you in the loop.
Yeah, it's got to be someone you feel comfortable with and who you trust.
Exactly. Now, once you've got that legal help squared away, the source talks about some practical steps to take right away.
Oh, like what?
Well, documentation is huge. Keep track of everything, dates, times of calls, names of people you talk to, any expenses related to the case. Literally write everything down.
Wow, so it's almost like building your own evidence file in addition to the official one.
It is, and it can be really helpful for your attorney later on, but honestly, it's good for you too.
How so?
Well, when everything is documented, it can help you feel more in control, you know? It's like you're taking charge during a time that feels super chaotic.
That makes a lot of sense. You've got the facts, you've got a lawyer. What about actually talking to your loved one in jail? That's got to be a sensitive area.
It is, and the source is really clear on this. Tell your loved one not to talk about the case details on any recorded line.
Really? Why not?
Because those calls are monitored, you know, and anything they say can be used against them in court.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's tough because your gut instinct is to want to connect and comfort them. But in this case, silence is actually their best defense until they've spoken to their lawyer.
It's kind of counterintuitive, right?
It is, but it's so important.
So you're saying don't talk about the case, but what about showing up in other ways,
Yeah.
like going to their hearings?
Absolutely, being there in the courtroom can actually make a big difference.
Really? How so?
Well, first of all, it shows the judge that your loved one has support, which can influence things like bail.
Okay.
And then even later on, plea bargains or sentencing, it shows they have people who care about them.
So it's not just about moral support, it's a strategic move, too.
It is. It shows the court that you're serious about helping them get through this. Now, the other thing the source mentions is bail and finances.
Ugh. Yeah, that's the part nobody wants to deal with, but I guess it's unavoidable.
It is, and it's one of those things where the sooner you understand how it works, the better.
I bet.
Like in your area, what are the different types of bonds? What's the amount? How do you even pay it? You know, it's a lot to take on.
It's like a crash course in a whole new world on top of everything else.
Yeah, and your attorney can be a huge help here. They can walk you through all the specifics, so don't be afraid to ask a lot of questions.
Okay, so that's the legal and financial stuff. But the source also talks about the emotional side of an arrest, right? For the person who's been arrested.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, think about it. They're probably feeling terrified, ashamed, uncertain about what's going to happen. It's incredibly traumatic.
So it's not enough to just handle the practical stuff. You've got to be there for them emotionally, too.
Exactly. And the source really emphasizes the importance of communication. Phone calls, letters, visits, these are lifelines for them. It shows them that they're not forgotten, that there's a whole world outside those walls.
It's that human connection, right? That sense that someone's still in their corner.
Exactly. And it can make a world of difference in how they cope with this experience. Now, what if you yourself aren't feeling that strong? What if you're struggling with your own emotions about all of this?
Yeah, or what if your family isn't the type to rally around each other like that? What does the source say about that?
It actually addresses that directly, and that's where things get really interesting.
Oh, okay. So are there like alternatives to just relying on your immediate family?
There are things like community resources, support groups, even the public defender's office can often connect you with help.
So you're not as alone as you might feel.
Exactly. You know, one thing that really stands out in these sources is just how isolating jail can be.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen it on TV, but I imagine the reality is a lot harsher.
It is, and understanding that environment can actually help you support your loved one better.
Okay, so what kind of insights does the source give us? What's it actually like in there?
Wilkie describes a pretty strict routine, very little contact with the outside world,
Right.
and this constant sense of uncertainty. It can be really jarring, especially for someone who's never been incarcerated before.
Wow. I hadn't thought about it like that. So
Mm.
knowing that, what can you actually do to help
Yeah.
besides, just staying in touch?
Well, one thing the source mentions is gathering paperwork like proof of residency, employment, character references, anything the attorney might need.
So you're basically taking care of things on the outside to ease their burden a little bit.
Exactly. It's about being proactive,
Yeah.
anticipating what they might need. Another thing is reminding them about court dates,
Right.
deadlines, any conditions of their bail. It's easy to lose track of things when you're in that kind of environment.
So you're like their external organizer, helping them stay on top of it all.
Exactly. And if you're able to help with legal fees, even a small amount can make a difference. It takes some of the pressure off.
Okay, so practical support is huge.
Yeah.
What about staying informed about the case itself? Why is that so important?
Because your loved one may not have access to all the information, and not knowing what's happening just adds to the stress.
Right.
So keeping them updated, explaining legal terms, it can help them feel less overwhelmed.
So you're like their link to the outside world, making sure they don't feel completely cut off.
Exactly. And don't underestimate the power of just listening,
Yeah.
letting them vent their frustrations, their hopes. Just having someone to hear them out can make a world of difference.
Yeah, that human connection is so important. But what about the bigger picture? I mean, the source talks about an arrest affecting not just the person, but everyone around them.
Oh, absolutely. It's like a ripple effect. It triggers all these complex emotions for family and friends, anger, disappointment, maybe even guilt.
So it's not just about supporting your loved one, but taking care of yourself too.
Yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So therapy support groups, even just talking to trusted friends can really help.
Okay, so you're acknowledging the impact on everyone. But how do you balance that support with accountability?
Mm.
You know, it's a tough line to walk.
It is. And while the source doesn't explicitly address this, I think it's an important conversation. Supporting someone doesn't mean condoning their actions.
Yeah.
It's about helping them understand the consequences and take responsibility.
So holding them accountable, but with compassion and understanding.
Exactly. It's about supporting them in making things right, learning from this experience, and hopefully coming out of it a stronger person.
It's about believing they can change even when they've made mistakes.
Exactly. Now, another thing the source touches on is what if you don't have a strong support network to lean on?
Right? Because not everyone does.
And that's where it gets really insightful. It talks about the importance of community resources, nonprofits, faith-based organizations, online support groups.
So there are people out there who are dedicated to helping families navigate this.
Absolutely. They offer emotional support, but also practical guidance. Legal referrals, financial assistance, help with social services.
That's reassuring to know, even if your own family can't be there for you in the way you need, there are other options.
Yeah, you're not alone in this.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm really struck by this whole idea of, finding strength in shared experience.
Yeah, that comes up a lot in the source material.
It does, and it makes sense, right? Like, when you're going through something this tough, it's easy to feel totally alone.
Absolutely. But the reality is there's so many other people who have been in your shoes.
And connecting with them can make a huge difference.
Huge. And that's where those support groups and nonprofits we talked about earlier can be so helpful.
Right. They're not just about information and resources, they're about community.
Exactly. It's a place where you can talk about what you're going through without feeling judged.
And learn from others who've been there.
Exactly. You realize you're not alone in this, and that can be so powerful.
But the source also talks about, communication within your own family.
Oh, yeah. That's key, but it can be hard.
I bet there are so many mixed emotions.
There are anger, blame, resentment, hurt. It's all there.
So how do you even begin to deal with that?
Well, the source says it's important to create a space where those feelings can be expressed, safely.
So not just pretending everything's fine.
No, no, you've got to acknowledge the tough stuff.
But at the same time, the source cautions against letting this one event define your whole family.
Right, it's a chapter, not the whole story.
Yeah, so finding that balance, I guess.
Exactly. You acknowledge it, but you don't let it take over everything.
So you can still be a family. Yeah? Do the things you've always done.
Exactly. It's about adapting but not losing yourselves.
Now, the source also brings up advocacy, not just for your loved one, but for, bigger changes to the system.
Right, and that goes back to that ripple effect we were talking about.
So how can people get involved in that?
Well, sharing your story is huge. Connecting with advocacy groups, pushing for policy changes, all of that can make a difference.
So you're using your experience to try and make things better for others.
Exactly. And the source really emphasizes that your voice matters.
Because when enough people speak up, things can actually start to change.
It might feel overwhelming at first, but you can turn that frustration into something positive.
So we've covered a lot in this deep dive, and it's clear there are no easy answers.
Yeah.
But I keep coming back to that idea of hope.
Yeah, that's the thing to hold on to.
It's what gets you through the tough times.
It is hope for your loved one, hope for your family, hope for a better future.
And it sounds like there's a lot of support out there for people going through this.
There is, and don't be afraid to reach out for it.
So that's it for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. And remember, even though this is a tough topic, it doesn't have to be the end of the story.
It can be the beginning of a new chapter.
A chapter of healing, growth, and maybe even positive change.
Exactly.